his collection is unbelievable. And when I say unbelievable, I literally mean that. When we walked into the vault that he kept, over 2,000 firearms, I had never seen anything like it in my life.
The Petersen collection is a spectacular collection. The most impressive individually owned firearms collection I have certainly ever seen.
This is one of the finest examples of the gun maker's art that you'll see any place.
A significant number of his guns that we were given for the museum include some of the finest contemporary arms in firearms history.
This is a monument to a great man who may have done as much or more for the shooting sports as anyone we know.
All right, let's start a little bit about the company. You know, he started with Hot Rod Magazine. That all began in January 1948. And this was a bunch of young guys who started off, it was really a program for an automotive show that he was doing in Los Angeles. And the program got so much favor that they had some left over, and they took him out to drag strips with coin changers on their belt, and they sold them. And they sold them soon enough. The print run, I believe, was 5,000. And they sold them soon enough to pay off their initial debt, which was a borrowed $400, and print the February issue. Within 1 year, they had Motor Trend magazine. So the company was built on automotive magazines. After Motor Trend, they had magazines called Honk and Rod and Custom, Sports Car Graphic, covering this whole spectrum of the automotive industry. But Pete's first love and his passions were for hunting and firearms. And by 1958, he had become successful enough that now he could take care of his passions and his first loves, and he started Guns and Ammo magazine.
Petersen's Guns and Ammo was the thing I'd rush down to the magazine store for every month, go down and get the latest issue and just pour through it, love the columnist, love the articles, read and believed every word in it. And it's when I really started my serious interest in firearms. Guns and Ammo came right along with it, and been reading it ever since.
Guns and Ammo, by the mere fact that it was on a newsstand, on every newsstand, got people interested in firearms. You pick up a magazine, you don't read it for just the articles, as they say. You look at the advertisements. You use magazine advertising as sources for developing your own interests.
With the advent of Guns and Ammo magazine, we created a column and a section of that magazine called Keep and Bear Arms. And in those days, we had people testify before the Dodd Commission, the editors of Guns and Ammo magazine, namely Tom Cialos and Colonel Townsend Whalen, after the assassination of John Kennedy, when everybody was clamoring to take away individual rights to own a firearm. Guns and Ammo magazine got very, very involved in that. And of course, that was all at the behest of Bob Petersen. He owned the company, and the magazine was one of his favorites, and he wanted to make sure that we didn't lose any of our cherished freedom.
It's my privilege to welcome you all here and to open this exquisite, family, wonderful, beautiful museum that you're really going to have a treat when you see what we have here. It represents a priceless collection of firearms and artifacts that you just won't see probably anywhere else in the world. Bob Petersen is a tremendous person in our whole business of firearms and hunting and the Second Amendment and everything. He was a giant, and he passed away, but he has left a piece of his legacy here, and so we're going to appreciate that tonight and for many years in the future. So to Robert Petersen, a great American, we salute.
Yes. Way to go. Way to go, James. I'm just a kid from Barstow, California. How many times have we heard Bob say that? That's what he used to call himself, because that's the way he saw himself. It strikes me that the most special among us are often the most deprecating, the most humble, and the most gracious. Bob Petersen was special. He was a true American legend. He's a larger-than-life story, overshadowed only by the legacy he has left behind. He was a hunter's hunter, a voracious collector of cars and art and wine, and the finest firearms in the world, many of them now on display here. He was truly a man's man. In other words, Bob Petersen was a gentleman. But his story is much more than that. It's deeper than the publishing empire he built and greater than all of his accomplishments, and simpler. Bob's story is a love story. He loved cars and guns and noticed there weren't publications available for enthusiasts. He pioneered niche magazines like Guns and Ammo, Motor Trend, and dozens more, and revolutionized the publishing industry. He dove into aviation and real estate and more business ventures than I can name tonight. The kid from Barstow forged a multi-billion-dollar empire from nothing more nor less than his own personal passion. But life is more than wealth and success and possessions. Bob was more than that too. His was a lifelong love affair with Margie, his wife of 44 years. She was his first and only love. It began in the 60s when Bob went to a party and met a knockout redhead named Margie McNally. He told a friend, "That's the woman I'm gonna marry." On their first date, he proposed. Margie said yes. 3 months later, they were married and embarked on a lifetime of shared love and dreams. One of Bob's dreams was to share his magnificent firearms collection with fellow gun owners and future generations of Americans. Bob isn't here to see his dream. I wish he were here. But I want you to know that it was Margie who made this gallery possible, to bring to life the dream of the man she so dearly loved. Margie, this is for you. We are all so grateful for your beautiful spirit and generosity. Thank you. This room was built in honor of a man we love, for his commitment to our rights, our hunting heritage, and our shooting sports. Bob was dedicated to the Second Amendment and freedom. He loved America and wanted every kid from nowhere to have the same opportunities he had for a great life and great freedom to live at large. Bob was my friend. Every time I saw him, he'd come up to me. He'd look me dead in the eye and he'd say, "So what are you doing to defend my guns?" I miss his voice, I miss his friendship, but I hear his challenge every day. I congratulate and thank everyone who had a hand in the opening of this gallery. It's a fitting tribute to the everlasting call of a great American gentleman. Never forget where you came from. Live free and enjoy life to the fullest measure. Stand up and defend freedom every day. Pursue what you love with all the gusto your heart can muster, just like that kid from Barstow, California. Thank you for being here tonight, and we are honored to be a part of this wonderful gallery.
the nicest collection of high-quality firearms in any major museum in the United States, easily. And in terms of American firearms, the very top and world class all the way. This is what Petersen, he is looking down at us and smiling tonight.
I had no idea of this collection, Petersen collection. It's phenomenal. They tell me that only about 25% of it is in the museum itself. And you could spend hours, just looking at the engraving, looking at the different firearms that are here. It's fascinating. I'd love to know what's not here with the rest of the collection.
I had the great pleasure of evaluating all of these high-end guns. My specialty are side-by-sides and over and unders in both shotguns and double rifles. So I've looked at 400, 500, 600 guns because the majority of the collection is not in here, it's upstairs. And so I've seen it all, and it's truly extraordinary. I mean, he collected for a couple different reasons. One, he just liked great quality. And then he found that the greatest engravers that have ever lived actually are alive and have been working in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So he commissioned a lot of the great English engravers, Ken Hunt, Brown Brothers, and Phil Kogan. And then when he became acquainted with the Italians, he had Fracassi and Torcoli and Petersoli, equally great engravers. And so he commissioned a lot of their work, and you'll see all of that in here.
Bob Petersen was a giant in the hunting and outdoor world, a guy who had great vision, great thoughts, and managed to make them all work. This is the greatest firearms collection I've seen anywhere in the world. It's just phenomenal, and I'm very pleased that he chose to give it to the NRA Museum.
I competed against him a number of times, and I never won one auction. One of the guns actually in the museum is a Woodward over and under, a 410, very desirable gun. And it was auctioned by the J.C. Devine Company. And unknown to each other, I was on one phone line, Bob was on the other phone line. And we got up to the high estimate for the gun. Everybody else dropped out, and I found out later that it was just Bob and I. And I was bidding for a friend of mine who asked me to bid for him because he was going to be out of the country. And I said, well, how high do you want me to go? And he said, well, just buy it, which is a dumb thing to do. So I kept going and going and going. We got up to 3 times the high estimate on this gun, and I said, I'm not going any farther. This guy's liable to kill me. And when he finds out what I bid on his behalf. And so Bob got it at the next bid. And so it was such an embarrassing amount of money that I didn't want anybody to know that I'd bid that much, because any other dealer that found out I'd bid that high for this gun would immediately raise the price for me for anything I wanted to buy. So I thought, well, I'm sure nobody knows who was on the phone. So 2 weeks later, I get a flyer from J.C. Devine, and the front page is touting this ultra-high price for this Woodward gun over here. And then he says the buyer was a wealthy collector from California who's big in the publishing business. Well, Bob Petersen, who else? And then he said the underbidder was a farmer from Iowa. Now, there aren't too many farmers from Iowa that, collect like I do, so he pegged us both.
Obviously, he's a remarkable success story. He started doing what he loved. He pursued the things that he loved, guns and cars. He saw there was a niche there for people like himself who loved cars, loved guns. Started, I understand, basically out of the trunk of his car with Hot Rod magazine, and it expanded to an empire of specialty publications, Guns and Ammo, Motor Trend, just dozens of the great hobby titles or special interest titles. and obviously exceptional in that field. But far beyond that, he was an exceptional hunter, an exceptional sportsman, an exceptional shooter, and he built a magnificent collection. As far as I'm concerned, the finest private American collection certainly that I know of, and we are just so fortunate that his vision included preserving that for future generations and sharing that with the public.
It's depressing. It's really depressing. Well, for one obvious reason is that Pete isn't here to enjoy it. Bob Petersen isn't here, and that part's depressing. But more in a personal thing. I could live to be another 100 years old, and I'm never going to have the opportunity to work with a collection this good again for as long as I live, because it doesn't get any better than what you see here in this gallery. It's just unrivaled. Nobody could put this collection together today for any amount of money. The opportunity, the availability, it doesn't exist.